And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success with Wes and Robert. I am annoyed at the moment. I have the shitty camera. My power went out, and we're trying to figure out how to make this work this morning so that you can get to YouTube. And it's like the camera that I normally use is directly in front of me. This one is on the side of me, so you're going to see the side of my face on YouTube. I'm sorry, that's what you get, but at least you can hear the content and you can deal with it, just like I had to deal with it. So haven't got the camera set back up yet, but whatever. Anyway, we're still here. That's how it goes. What's going on, Robert?
Good morning. Have a marvelous Monday, everybody.
Yes. I feel like I had no weekend. I was out. Well, Saturday was my daughter's birthday, so we had that going on. I had to work a little bit, and then yesterday I cut wood all day, and drove a lot. But I'm here.
Well, that's cool.
Yep.
So I got stuck on this idea of meaning, right? What gives meaning to life? Who defines meaning, right? What's a meaningful life? It's really interesting because I've got caught up in writing a book for International Affairs called The Monopolists of Meaning. Because in essence, if you think about it, it's our elites that tell us what everything means, right?
Yep.
You know, that we should not like North Korea. Not that North Korea sets on, should not like North Korea. We should be upset at the Russians. We should, contain the Chinese. We've got all these things that are supposed to act on us, but we don't really see them, and they tell us what they mean.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like life is what gives you meaning? What is purpose? We talked about, process the other day, but now it's a question of meaning. What would give meaning to your life? Mm-hmm. What would be meaningful for you to accomplish this week?
Yeah. It's interesting because I sit there and I think about that. Like, it's funny that you came up with that topic today, because I was thinking the same thing, just about like the cutting the wood and going out this weekend. I had an appointment with a gal who, you put yourself in the right place at the right time and you end up in the right situation. But trying to sit there and find that situation over time takes forever. I feel like it's not forever, but it seems like forever to us because we want instant feedback. And I was talking to her about it, and she was telling me, my daughter did this, my daughter did that, and she ended up here. And if she had not put herself in this situation, then it never would have happened. So I feel like that's kind of what life's about. But she also was talking to me about like what makes you happy, because we all know this, but you don't really think about it. In my work, I struggle with it every single day. It's like, where do I find meaning in it? Where do I find joy in what I'm doing? And the reality of this whole thing for me is I've always found that I'm always wanted to be a teacher. Like I want to teach, I want to help people. And what I'm going to have to do in order to make that happen is to just find a way to teach in everything that I do. And so my job as a salesperson gives me the opportunity to educate someone and teach them about a product, right? I may not like the product, I may not enjoy the product, but it supplies me with something. And that direct satisfaction of being able to solve a problem for someone and help them to find value in what you're doing is kind of where I have to like force myself to think and put myself in that situation,
Yeah, I mean, we all struggle with getting caught up in the daily grind, and there's a concept called automacy of being. Mm-hmm. And that means that we do so many things automatic. Some of it is literally little heuristics that we have so that we don't use the most expensive part of our body, which is our cognitive process of uses the most energy, uses the most fuel. It's the most demanding. And so our body kind of does all these workarounds so that we don't use the cognitive part of our brain a lot. So we're just going through the motions, so to speak, right?
Right.
And going through the motions doesn't give you a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
You just don't. It's like, what is it? It's Tuesday or Monday, and you're like, I can't even remember what I ate for lunch yesterday.
Right.
So you really are searching for something that, you can touch that gives you juice, mm-hmm. right? And you're trying to do that, and you're saying, this is my sweet spot. Teaching is my sweet spot.
Right.
How do I make that a part of my everyday so that I can get some joy. And again, back to the same thing. I can find meaning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, what does that do? And I was sitting there yesterday and I was thinking, I'm out here. It's kind of a monotonous thing, right? Like my brother is got the chainsaw and he's cutting the logs and I'm picking them up and I'm loading the trailer. And then I'm just sitting there going, I'm looking at the trailer and I'm like, hey, we're halfway there. Hey, we're 3/4 of the way there. Hey, look, we did this. This is something that I have done and I have seen. Like, it's not, like, and then my brain always goes to the process, like, how could we make this faster? How could we make this, like, how could we be more efficient with this? Like, and that's where it goes. But like the joy of completing something, the joy of accomplishing something. And I don't know why, but like that feeling of, hey, this is something about getting your hands dirty and like actually doing something. And it makes you feel like you see the process ending. One of the things I struggle with my job is that the process of selling it and getting people to look at it and finishing that process is not as enjoyable because you don't see the end result. You don't get to put it up. You don't get to, we're talking about window coverings here, but like some people get excited about having that in there. All right, it's one more thing. And like, I get to pull this down and I get to look, I don't know. I don't even know if I can find joy in that, but that's the search, right? The search is being happy and, like, having this conversation is fun to me. Talking about this, sharing this with people is fun, but I still got to find a way to make it be something that I can do all the time, right? That's the hard part. And I feel like it's going to happen, but if I stop, it never will.
Well, it was interesting because I had the most unique point in my life where I graduated 3 years in a row. I graduated in 22 with a bachelor's, at 23 with a graduate certificate, and then finally a master's in 24. So I literally had this amazingly gratifying feedback chain, right?
Yep.
Like boom, 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 graduation after graduation after graduation. And the strange part about it is, of course, my sons and daughter came to it and enjoyed it. But the reality is that it was a milestone that I could celebrate and that gave my effort meaning. Right. And I could say, because I think it's so hard. My youngest son just got admitted to A&M. He's probably got about 2.5 years to finish his degree. And it's been a long road for him.
Yeah.
And so when he finally graduates, I'm not exactly sure how he's going to take it because he probably had been in school at that point for 6 years, right, just to do his undergrad. And, he's searching for, it's not really meaning. He's just kind of grinding through it.
Yeah.
And you get into those positions where you can see the goal or whatever the goal may be. It's way out there. But the thing I've tried to explain to him is you end up being a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. These are just milestones that society sets up.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. My friend asked me last night, she said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm studying something about how elites make war. And she goes, you like that? I said, well, I'm an academic. Of course I like that.
Yeah.
That's what I do is there's always another book to read. There's always another research paper to review. There's always something to do, right? It's never ending, but it's the process that I find joy in. And it gives meaning to my life because if I can add a little value, if I can change perspective just a little bit on how people see the world, then I've accomplished my goal. Kind of like you're teaching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, no matter what, that I think is, I don't even know. Yeah. It's a lifelong learning thing. Even being an academic, I think being an academic means that it's just the subject matter of what you're following. But being a lifelong learner, period, is that the fact that no matter what, you're never done. And I feel like I'm that way too. Like, I feel like the meaning behind what I am doing becomes, I'm doing this because I'm trying to find more. Like I haven't found the information that I need yet to accomplish the goal that I'm looking for. So maybe it is in this next book that I read. Maybe it is in the next, lesson that I take or whatever I find. And that's really where it's at. It's like finding a way to continue to keep achieving because I'm never gonna, it's just like being up a bat and striking out. Like, you can't read a book on how to hit a curveball, but you can practice hitting a curveball a lot more and learn to recognize that. And that's what we're trying to do, is recognize what the cues and the keys are to making it so that we can be successful in whatever we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again back to the idea of trying to find a place where you get meaning. But it was so interesting. I was sitting there watching um, a football game. It's Sunday, so I was watching a football game. I was thinking about how much these guys are being paid, right?
Right.
And I was thinking about how out of line it is with the rest of society. And it's not, I don't begrudge them anything. I think they should, get whatever the market demands.
Right.
But then I was beginning to think about it and I was thinking, that's really, really distracting. And then I know it seems weird, but I went over and was thinking about the federal budget. The largest discretionary spending in the federal budget is DOD, Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically our kind of our foreign policy, for lack of a better word. But if you think about it, the largest discretion or non-discretionary spending, okay, is you begin to look at how spending we do spend all this, but people don't really care about foreign policy.
Right.
Foreign policy is a little niche; people don't care about it, and it just seems like our society is distracted from things that really do have meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your country goes to war, that means your kids are going to war,
Right.
right? Your foreign policy seems to me to be pretty significant, but yet we give it no credence. We spend all this money on, but we yet give it no focus. Politicians don't even talk about foreign policy on the stump, so to speak. Why? People don't care.
Yeah.
And so it seems like we're distracted by the things that don't matter
Yeah.
and not focused on the things that do. So, I mean, when we're trying to find meaning, maybe that's one of our challenges with trying to find meaning is we're focused on the wrong things.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to unpack there because I mean, the reality of that whole situation is even though, if you think about it, right? All right, so the NFL's got what 30 teams with 100 people. That's like 3,000 people, right? If you think about it, 3,000. That's at minimum 3,000 people that survive over the NFL situation, and these guys get paid millions and millions of dollars, and the Department of Defense has how many, like I've never done that research, but to figure out how many actual people are involved in this situation, and then we're taking this money and we're spending it, I mean, what's the average salary for a person who is in the military? I can't imagine it's more than $60,000-$70,000 a year.
No, it's
And
peanuts.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
nothing. But these people, it's just like teachers. It's the same thing here in Idaho. A teacher gets paid starting salary is $37,000 a year. This is someone who is teaching my child how to be an active part of society. I think we probably ought to put a little bit more focus on that. It's
Yeah, that's our future, so to
yeah,
speak. Right. So in other words, if you were looking at investing and you were looking at investing in yourself and you said, well, this is the things I need to do for myself. This is the food. This is the education. This is you have this big investment. And it's strange that the cost of a college education has skyrocketed,
right.
right? So the investment you're making in your future has skyrocketed, yet the investment we're making in our kids hasn't moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, that's back to where are we finding meaning and where are we finding value? And it just seems like we're a little bit lopsided. And again, I'm not trying to begrudge people. Listen, you guys go demand whatever you want, but $250,000 to play football for 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's $250 million, not million, billion. That's a lot of money
Yeah.
to
And
play
and
sports.
the funny thing about that too is like the other thing is if you really think about like the education system, like what they're charging, like the return on investment is not that great
Mhm.
unless you invest in something that that is very lucrative, like and even being a doctor is not lucrative as much as it used to be, or being a lawyer, or being someone who makes one of these higher paid jobs. It was amazing to me, the gal that I was talking to, she works somewhat for like as a distributor to Tesla to help them with cars and things like that, and she looked at me and she goes, I've talked to you here for about an hour and a half, and you just get into these conversations with these interesting people. I mean, and that's a cool thing. It's like she was with Tesla when it first started, and not working directly for Tesla, but working with Tesla to provide them with some of the electronical parts that they need for electronical. I just made up a word. Electronic parts that they need for the car, right? With the wiring and the chips and those things, and she looked at me and she goes, I've been through this. I've been on the ground level like this and that. And she goes, you just talking to you about it and just kind of seeing how you carry yourself and what you do and those things. It's like, you should start at your own school. And I'm like, that's a whole thing that I've never thought about. But we have taken, and she's like, you should start a trade school, because I like trades. Like, I do like doing that. I like working with my hands. I like solving a problem with that. It's just never been lucrative enough to supply the money that I need to have my family survive, right? And she's like,
Right.
you should look into that, starting your own school, starting a trade school. I think it would be great, because you would be able to help people, teach them, show them that this is what's going on. And I mean, it's amazing to me, some of the thoughts that come along, and things that you can look at. But then it becomes, how do you make that happen?
Right. But again, it goes back to the idea of trying to find meaning in life, right?
Yeah.
Trying to find that juice is going to get you up every day, that's going to get you fired up, where you think you're making a contribution not only to your own household because you're bringing home a paycheck, but you're making a contribution to the greater good.
Right.
And that becomes, because I know we're all engaged in a form of self-promotion. I know that. I understand that. We need to kind of promote ourselves. But as we're promoting ourselves, are we creating good for the public, or is it just about us?
Right.
And I think there's an opportunity to do both. And that's the challenge that we all find, is finding that meaning. And we're in a culture that doesn't read.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're in a culture that is attention deficit disordered.
Yep.
Right. Yet they're staring at an information portal almost all the time.
Yep. Yeah.
Doing
you have
what?
this
To be
supercomputer in your
entertained?
hand, trying to figure out
Yeah.
dumb shit that you don't need to know. Hey, I saw
Right.
that actor on TV. What else were they in? Let me go ahead and look that up. Like, it freaking matters.
Exactly.
But that's
And so
what
that's
I do.
back to,
I mean, it's
yeah. Well, it is fast, right?
yeah.
But it always fascinates me, because there's so much out there that we don't see. My son took off for Brussels earlier this last week, and he spent the weekend in Vienna, right? And this is his first time in Europe, and he just so happened to have a friend over in Vienna, so he got to go down. And now he's back in Brussels, and this is probably about a 3-year tour of duty for him in Europe. And I said, you're going to come back changed, because you're going to change languages when you drive, 100 miles.
Yeah.
You're going to change countries. You're going to change language. Everything means something different to these cultures, right? Everything is different perspective than the United States. And you can change perspectives within, like I said, 100, 200 miles. Every flight from where he's at in Brussels, in 2 hours, he can reach, think about this, all the way over to Greece, all the way down to the middle part of Africa, all throughout the Middle East, all of Europe, right? The UK, Finland, Netherlands. I mean, 2 hours from where he's at?
Yep. And
He
what do we
literally
got?
can see the world.
We got Mexico and Canada.
It's a little bit different. We can. The laughable part for us is all we can do is make states, right? In 2 hours, what am I going to do? I'm going to make it, out of Texas. In some cases, I don't even get out of Texas.
And literally, the only thing that changes is the accent in the way they call things.
Yes.
Certain things.
Yes. Yeah. That's very true here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes.
Hey, thanks everyone for joining us on TikTok. We appreciate you being here. I'm sorry it's a little bit off today. Normally I'm looking this way, so I'm having a hard time interacting over here because my camera is in a different spot. I had a power outage, so we're trying to figure that out. But we're just talking about what motivates you, what gets you moving. We do this 2 days a week, Monday, Wednesday. Wednesday we go through Robert's book, Ars Victorious. You need to come check it out. Here and here. I got to do it 2 different ways because we got 2 different cameras going.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can find that on Amazon. It's a real good read. It's just amazing that I feel like people who are trying to grow all the time, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find a way to continue growing. And when you stop learning, you stop growing. And it doesn't even have to be like, hey, reading books. I have to tell you, I think we've had this conversation before, but when I was in college, which I have 2 degrees, I very rarely read the book. Like I used all my life experiences to figure that out. But then you would go through and like, here's a question about this. Where do I find it? I found out a really good way to look up in the work from the index, find where the chapter is, what they were talking about and where that needs to go, which is what I feel like college teaches you. I feel like I'm the proponent of, hey, I'm way better off. Like when I got into student teaching, that was when I learned because I was actually doing the process. I mean, it's crazy, but I have found in life after the fact that the books that I read, like as I'm staring at a stack of books behind you,
Mm.
read or listen to, because I try to find a way every single day. People's like, I don't have time to read. Well, what do you do in your job? Like I've found a workaround. I'm driving. I click that book on Audible and I listen to that book as I'm driving. Now, one would argue that you don't get all the information as you're kind of a little distracted as you're doing both because you can't multitask, right? You truly can't. But I feel like, what else am I doing? I have nothing else to do, right? So at least I'm taking the time to try and figure out and get that workaround in order to get the information that I need to get. And if I have to listen to the book twice, which I do when I'm really engaged in it, you find something that you missed the first time too.
Oh yeah, and I listen to. I not only read, but I have. Oh my gosh, a great Audible library. Because anytime I get 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes in the car, I flip on an audiobook.
Yeah.
Why? Because again, I've got two choices. I can listen to music or I can listen to something. And so I love music, don't get me wrong. It's
Yeah.
just that I try to fill my brain with as much knowledge as I can. And I'm in this unique position of being in college as a graduate student, and the average age of my peers is about 25.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they see the world as not as I do, of course. They see the world as everything is new, everything has happened for the first time. Oh my gosh, look at this. I'm now in the position where we're getting very, very close to being in school with kids that weren't even born before 9/11.
Yeah.
Born, let alone remember it, right? So you begin to see that they see the world as they are, which is very, very small. And so just so happens I'm doing the leading or teaching today in class, and it really is over these issues about how Donald Trump changed the presidency. And I went, well, he didn't actually. And then people are like, well, what do you mean? It was so revolutionary. I said, not actually. I said, there was the same kind of thing with FDR. There was the same kind of thing with Teddy Roosevelt. I can go on and on and on that what you see as unique and one of a kind isn't really in history.
Yeah.
But again, because we're not really good historians, we look at it like, oh, this is brand new. I'm like, no, a version of it happened before. Like they talked about how media is controlled by, 5 or 6 corporations. Well, do
Yeah.
you know at the turn of the century, not the turn of the 20th century, the 19th century, that actually media was controlled by 2 people, 2 guys, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, I
And
mean,
people are
that's
like,
you
yeah,
see, you could see this. Like, it's funny how I was talking to Jay, my friend Jay, about this the other day. Because we're going, I mean, obviously politics is a thing, and I don't necessarily feel like, I'm not going to dive into what I believe because, like we've talked about, I'm kind of down the middle. I feel like there's 2 sides to both of it, but we only see one side, right? Because the media concentrates on one thing. And so you want to see conservative side, you go to 1 or 2 outlets. And if you want to see liberal side, then you go to every other one because that's really the way that it works. It's kind of sad. But what you'll find is that you don't see what's really going on the other side because all they do is concentrate on the negative stuff of one side. And that's kind of the way that it is. And if you really don't believe that, then go look at the narrative, look at the key words that they use, both sides use. There was a vice presidential debate last week, and I don't think we talked about it, but because it was on Wednesday. But the vice presidential debate, they have 2 people up there. They have one guy who is there's really just like rambling off things, and then they have another guy who is really well prepared, and he's talking really good. He's got all the answers to the questions because you can tell that he truly worked through the issues and studied them out and everything. And then what do you get the next day? Describing this guy, every single outlet is calling him slick. Which, what do you think about when you think about the word slick? But I saw someone did a montage of it, of about 30 different anchors who called him slick. What did they do? Do you think that they all came up with the word slick on their own? Or did they get together and then use that because they want everyone to see this narrative that this guy is slick? To me, when I hear someone is slick, it means that they are shady and that they are not, like they're really smooth because they've found a way, like they're like a used car salesman, right? That's a slick thing to do, I mean, and to me, it's like, okay, so now we've got that word that we're hammering into everyone over and over again, and they all use it. Like Trump uses Crooked Joe, right? Like that's how he does it, but he's the only one saying it. And so he continues to say that. And then, people hear that stuff, it gets in their head, and that's what they think. And
that's back to that concept of monopolists of meaning.
Yeah.
When you basically have, in this case, let's call it media, that define what things mean. In other words, the performance means this. In other words, well prepared. In this case, again, I didn't see the debate.
Yeah.
Well prepared, but not your guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well prepared becomes not well prepared. It becomes slick. In other words, I'm going to tell you what it means, right? And this is one of the things in culture is who's telling you what things mean, right? And that's what we're all trying to figure out. But these people are trying to monopolize meaning. They're saying, like you said, there's no way that they all got together on the same page and used the same word, but they did trigger each other.
Yeah.
And you can tell that, it's like, oh, I get to pick up on what are they doing? They're picking up and deciding what things mean to us, right? Yeah. And trying to say, this is, and again, they pick up concepts and words like populist, right? Somebody that appeals to the popular mindset. Well, we're still a democracy, which means supposedly, well, we're not actually a democracy, but the idea behind it is that we're supposed to be living with the tyranny of the majority.
Yep.
It was 51% dictate the terms. It is what it is.
And it's funny because that's another keyword that they use all the time. It's a threat to democracy. And it's like, okay, it's a threat to democracy. What does that mean? Like, we're going to continue to use these keywords of what that is,
Right. We use these narratives, right? Because then it defines meaning, gives it meaning. It says, well, then it's a threat. Then we can't have somebody who's a threat. Now, here's the thing. You can't, I'm not political, but I'm going to say this. You can't call Trump a threat to democracy. He's already been president for 4 years and democracy didn't end.
Yeah.
Okay. So you cannot, I'm sorry. You can't do that. Democracy did not end.
Yeah, and
democracy is not going to end if he gets reelected.
I mean, you don't want to talk political about it. Like, that's great. And again, like I said, this is not something that is political. But like you think about it, it's anything in life. Now we've taken this word bully, right? It's the same thing. Like, bully has a completely different meaning. So if I tell you that you got gray hair, I'm bullying you. I'm picking on you. It's like that's not what it's about. It's like, is it true? Do you have gray hair? Yeah, you do. Okay. Am I bullying you? No. Is there something wrong with gray hair? No. But you've created this narrative in your head that there is because someone called you a bully.
And it's interesting because at the turn of the 19th century, the word bully meant something different. Bully pulpit meant excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent preaching, right? In other words, Teddy Roosevelt had the bully pulpit. That was considered positive. But the word bully now means what? To be bullied.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. To pick a word, right? Yeah. Yep. And again, who defines meaning?
Yep.
We literally change the definition of the word to suit us.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the way that it is. That's the way the world is now, because we define what that is, and we're the ones who work on that, and it is. I mean, it's amazing. You can turn a word into anything that you want. Self-confidence, excuse me, the word narcissist comes out a lot of times, like we've talked about before. And it's like, it's got this meaning that now when you have a little bit of self-confidence, you're narcissistic. So we should just walk around and be completely humble all the time, never have confidence in what we do. Well, those people who are successful in what they do have to have confidence to take that chance to make that happen. So I don't know. There's just all these words that we have completely used, and it's all as, I'm not quite sure. Michael Lynn over here on TikTok says it's all designed to divide, and that's exactly what it is.
Yes. Michelle, good morning. It's funny. A friend was talking last night on a TikTok live about when she was a stewardess and one of the engines caught on fire in an MD-80, and one of the passengers told her, "Hey, the engine's on fire." And she went back and looked. She's a stewardess, and she went back and looked when she was on fire. She goes up and tells the pilot. Pilot said the same thing I said, which was, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "Why are you not upset?" Well, we have two engines. I mean, it's serious. The jet is very overpowered. We don't get upset. We get upset when the second engine stops.
Yeah,
right?
now you have no engine. That's a little bit of a different problem.
Right. So your version of important is what? That one engine's on fire. My version of important is two engines on fire. Now we got a real problem. The pilot just kind of looked at her. He was an Air Force pilot. Kind of looked at her and went, "Oh, okay, we'll turn around and go back." And she's just like, "Well, why are you not upset? Got two engines."
I got two choices too. It's like sit there and panic about it or figure out a way to get the hell out of the air and on the ground.
Right. But it was interesting listening to her. She was just like, "Oh my God, we're on fire." He's like, "Okay, we'll be okay." Right. How do we define meaning in this case? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great talk this morning, Robert. Thank you everyone for hanging out with us. Catch us Wednesday at 5 o'clock Mountain Time. I still hate that I still have to think about 7 o'clock Eastern Time for those of you who can't do the time changes like I just did in my head. And come check out Robert's book, RS Victorious. Hopefully I'll have my camera fixed at that time so that I don't have to do this two different ways. But thank you very much for hanging out with us. Make sure that you follow on TikTok. Check it out on Instagram. Shaping Success with Wes Tankersley is what it is under. And we will see you next time.
Have a marvelous Monday, everybody.